Our Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit be with us. And there was one called Barabbas, chained with his fellow rebels, who had committed murder in the uprising, and the crowd, crying aloud, began to ask, as he had always done for them. But Pilate answered them, saying, Do you hope me to release for you the sovereign of the Yehudim? For he knew that the chief priest had handed him over. Because of envy. So he already knew what was happening. And the chief priest stirred up the crowd that he should rather release Barabbas to them. And Pilate answered and again said to them, What then do you hope me to do to him whom you call the sovereign of the Yehudim? And again they cried out, Impale him. And Pilate said to them, Why? What evil has he done? And they vehemently cried out, Impale him. And Pilate, hoping to satisfy the crowd, like what? Why don't you satisfy our Father in heaven? And Pilate, hoping to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them. And having whipped him, he delivered Yahushua over to be impaled. And then you whipped him. And the soldiers led him away into the court, and he delivered over Yahushua to be impaled. And the soldiers led him away into the court, which is the palace, and they called together the entire company of soldiers, and decked him with purple, and they plaited a crown of thorns, put it on him, and they began to call out to him, Greetings, sovereign of the Yehudim. And they kept beating him on the head with the reed, and were spitting on him, and bending the knee, they were bowing down to him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple off him, and put his own garments on him, and led him out to impale him. And they compelled a passerby, Shimon, a Cyrenian, coming from a field, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to bear his stake. And they brought him to the place of Golgotha, which is translated place of a skull. And they were giving him wine mixed with myrrh to drink, but he did not take it. And when they impaled him, they divided his garments, casting lots for them, what each one should take. And it was the third hour, and they impaled him. And the inscription of his accusation, was written above, the sovereign of the Yehudim. And with him they impaled two robbers, one on his right and the other on his left. And the scripture was filled, which says, And he was reckoned with the lawless. And those passing by were blaspheming him, shaking their heads, and saying, you who destroyed the dwelling place and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the stake. And likewise the chief priests and the scribes, mocking to one another, said, He saved others, he is unable to save himself. The Messiah, the sovereign of Israel, come down now from the stake, so that we see and believe. And those who were impaled with him were reproaching him. And when the 6th hour came, darkness came over all the land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Yahushua cried out. The 9th hour. So he was on that for 9 hours. 9 hours of dying. This is wow. And at the 9th hour, Yahushua cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is translated, My El, why have you forsaken me? And some of those standing by, when they heard it, said, See, he is calling for Eliyahu. And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and offered it to him to drink, saying, Leave him. Let us see if Eliyahu does come to take him down. And Yahushua cried out with a loud voice, and breathed his last. For 9 hours he was on the stake, impaled and dying. Brothers and sisters, that is just sad. And Yahushua cried out with a loud voice, and crying out to Abba. And Yahushua cried out with a loud voice, and breathed his last. And the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the captain, who was standing opposite him, saw that he cried out like this and breathed his last, he said, Truly this man was the son of Elohim. And there were also women watching from a distance, among whom was also Miriam from Magdala, and Miriam the mother of Jacob the less, and of And there were also women watching from a distance, among whom was also Miriam from Magdala, and Miriam the mother of Jacob the less, and of Joseph, and Shalama, who also followed him and attended him when he was in Galilee, and many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. And when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Ramathayim, a prominent council member, who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, came boldly, Joseph of Ramathayim, a prominent council member, who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, came boldly, went in went into Pilate and asked for the body of Yahushua. But Pilate wondered whether he was already dead. So summoning the captain, he asked him if he was already dead. And when he learned this from the captain, he gave the body to Joseph. And he, having bought fine linen, took him down and wrapped him in the linen. And he laid him in a tomb which had been hewn out of the rock, and rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. And Miriam from Magdala and Miriam the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid. And when the Sabbath was past, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam the mother of Jacob and Shalamah brought spices to go and anoint him. And very early on day one of the week, they came to the tomb when the sun had risen, and they said among themselves, "Who shall roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb for us?" And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, for it was extremely large. And having entered into the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right, wearing a white robe, and they were greatly astonished. And he said to them, Do not be much astonished. You seek Yahushua of Nazareth, who was impaled. He was raised. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. See, this is why it's also impossible that it's like Easter and all this other blasphemy, holidays doesn't even make any sense. We don't even know what day Yahushua was already out here, and it was another angel that was in there that just already told him that Yahushua wasn't in there anymore. So it's like, bro, it's just like, man, these people. And he said to them, Do not be much astonished. You seek Yahushua of Nazareth, who was impaled. He was raised. He is not here. See the place where they laid him? And go, say to his taught ones and Kepha that he is going before you into Galilee. You shall see him there, as he said to you. And they went out and fled from the tomb, and were trembling and bewildered, and they spoke to no one, for they were afraid. And having risen early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Miriam from Magdala, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and reported to those who had been with him, mourning and weeping. And when they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they did not believe. And after this he appeared in another form to two of them as they walked and went into a field. And they went and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Later he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he reproached their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he was raised. Later he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he reproached their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he was raised. And he said to them, Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to every creature. He who has believed and has been immersed shall be saved, but he who has not believed shall be condemned. And these signs shall accompany the ones who believe in my name. They shall cast out demons. They shall speak with renewed tongues. They shall take up snakes, and if they drink in any deadly drink, it shall by no means hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall get well. Then indeed, after the master had spoken to them, he was received up into the heaven, and sat down at the right hand of Elohim. And they went out and proclaimed it everywhere, while the master worked with them and confirmed the word through the accompanying signs. Amen. Book of Mark. Let's go. Father willing, tomorrow we're gonna knock out the book of Luke. Let's get it done.